The cursor blinked steadily on the last line of the gateway protocol as I opened the secure window to send the final layer of biometric confirmation for a $100 million defense contract. A deal that had taken 9 months, 4 international trips, and 3 sleepless nights to finalize. Suddenly, the door swung open, and in walked Gregory Carrington, the CEO himself. Without bothering to knock, he wasn't alone. Right behind him stood a young woman in a powder blue pantsuit clutching a tablet like it was a prized possession. She looked barely old enough to rent a car. "Olivia," Gregory said with casual ease, "this won't take long." I straightened up in my chair and asked, "What is it?" He gave me a strange smile. "We're initiating a leadership transition effective immediately." Confused, I blinked. "Immediately? But I'm retiring at 5 today. I just need to—" "You've done more than enough," he cut me off, gesturing to the woman behind him. "This is Chloe. She'll be taking over from here, my niece." His niece, slowly. I turned my gaze toward her. She smiled broadly, reaching out her hand as if we were old friends meeting for brunch. "I've been shadowing digital strategy upstairs," she said brightly. "This is such an honor." I didn't move. The secure window remained open on my monitor, the cursor still blinking patiently beside the line that read, "Final voice verification required." Gregory cleared his throat. "Security will assist with the transition. Your belongings will be sent to your residence." My mouth opened, but no words came out. 28 years I'd devoted to this company. I had drafted that contract and built the client relationship from scratch. Only 3 weeks ago, I'd been asked to personally oversee the final stage. And now, mid-shift, I was being replaced by a niece in designer heels who'd never even met the client rising from my still warm chair. I glanced one last time at the screen. The system waited for me, alone. It wouldn't respond to anyone else. But Gregory didn't know that not yet. "Congratulations, Chloe," I said at last, taking her hand. "I hope you understand what you're stepping into." Her grip tightened slightly, but her smile never faltered. I logged out without closing the system, grabbed my blazer, and walked out without looking back behind me. The cursor kept blinking, waiting. I hadn't expected a parade, but maybe a card, a handshake, a nod in the hallway. Some simple thank you, Olivia. But standing before my desk, the one I'd sat at for nearly 30 years, I realized the goodbye had already happened without me being invited. The floor was quieter than usual, which was saying something. No one met my eyes. Most of the junior staff pretended to be on calls, fingers flying across keyboards that weren't even on the same people who once sought my advice, now couldn't lift their heads. I opened the top drawer of my desk, the one holding my favorite pens, emergency Tylenol, and an old photo of our first executive team. Only a few things were worth taking now. The rest, they could have— I pulled out a worn leather notebook filled with client notes spanning years. Some of those clients no longer existed. Others I'd helped grow from startups to global enterprises, names Chloe hadn't heard of, names Gregory had already forgotten. By my chair sat a cardboard box, likely dropped off by the office manager during my meeting with Gregory Efficient Cold No Bow. No label. I went through the motions, pulling out books, files, a framed certificate from a procurement conference in Zurich, when I noticed something. My nameplate was gone from the glass wall outside my office, where it had proudly read Olivia Meyer, Senior Director of Strategic Contracts. In its place was a new plaque, Chloe Carrington, Director, Emerging Ventures. Emerging Ventures. They'd erased 28 years of service in one afternoon and slapped on a title that sounded like an unpaid internship. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat back down one last time in my chair and stared at the monitor. Using my admin credentials, I logged in and pulled up the master directory. I didn't delete anything that would harm the company, but I cleared out every personal document, old memo, and training material I'd ever created. The only thing I left untouched was a small, silent program buried deep in the system. Gateway Final. It looked like a basic script, harmless, forgettable, but inside was the biometric encryption needed to trigger the final payment release on the $100 million deal. It couldn't be accessed remotely, overridden, or rewritten without tearing down the entire system. Only one person could use it properly. Me. As I shut down the screen, a ping echoed in the room, an alert from my now disconnected company email, which I'd forgotten to close subject. Congrats to Chloe Sender. exacoms@carrington.com. Please join us in congratulating Chloe Carrington on her promotion to Director of Emerging Ventures. Her fresh energy and vision will lead Carrington into its next era of innovation. They'd sent it to me by mistake. For a brief second, I imagined replying with something short, something venomous. But instead, I closed the tab. What could I say? That I'd given them my best years while Chloe walked in carrying her last name in a LinkedIn profile? I sealed the box, stood up, and walked away. My heels echoed with every step, each one heavier than the last. No one stopped me. No one said goodbye. Bitterness burned in my throat, but I swallowed it. Let them cheer for Chloe. They had no idea what they just locked themselves out of. I thought it couldn't get more insulting than being replaced mid-shift, but the next 48 hours made it clear. Carrington wasn't just eager to erase me. They wanted to parade the replacement like a prize pig at a tech expo. My inbox, what little personal access remained, flooded with press releases and LinkedIn updates. There she was, Chloe Carrington, barely 24, sitting at my desk, in my chair, even drinking from the mug my assistant had given me 5 birthdays ago. One email was a mass announcement from the executive comms team sent to hundreds across the industry. Chloe Carrington officially takes the helm as Director of Emerging Ventures. Having just secured a historic $100 million defense contract, Carrington Ears welcomes her innovative lens and generational intuition in this bold new chapter. Attached was a high-res photo of Chloe smiling into the camera, legs crossed in a power pose, glittering heels shining like currency, one arm casually draped over the back of my ergonomic chair. A faint line at the bottom of the email read, "Photo taken from Olivia Meyer's former office former." I clicked the link to the full interview. Some glossy finance startup had already scooped her up, running a profile titled "The Gen Z Dealmaker, Disrupting Defense Procurement Disrupting." She couldn't even pronounce procurement correctly. I stood there with my arms folded, watching the interview play out. Chloe leaned in a bit, like a TED speaker, exuding a rehearsed confidence as she spoke. This deal boiled down to bold intuition. When I examined the numbers, I just felt it was the perfect moment to push boundaries. The client, Constellia Erasure, was open to new ideas. Constellia Erasure? It was actually Constellar Erasure, one of the top names in government aviation logistics, and she completely butchered it on camera. She kept going, unaware of her mistake. I decided to finalize terms earlier than expected. There was no reason to delay, especially with how decisive we needed to be. I had to stop the video. She made no calls. I did. She didn't sit through 12 weeks of midnight Zooms with legal. I did. She didn't negotiate the compliance clause that took 4 rewrites and a 5-hour standoff. I did. She simply inherited the work and slapped her initials on it like a child playing with glitter glue. The worst part? People were buying it. Comments beneath the video praised inspiring young leadership and claimed legacy titles needed to make way. I wanted to shout. Instead, I shut the browser and opened a message I'd been avoiding all day, a DM from Marcus Hanley, one of the few directors who hadn't looked away when I passed his office. Marcus had watched the clip. This isn't right. We both know it. I didn't reply. What could I say? That watching someone parade around in my title, my achievements, and my office while completely misrepresenting a deal they didn't understand, felt like a slap in the face to everything I built? That the bitterness I swallowed yesterday was sharpening into rage? I moved to the window and looked out. The city skyline gleamed under the afternoon sun, just like Chloe's shoes, flashy, temporary, useless in a storm. Sure, they gave her the chair, but they had no clue that the system beneath it, the blinking cursor waiting for the final voice confirmation, still belonged to me. She might hold the camera, but I held the power. And I wasn't finished watching systems built for security aren't easy to break. And I'd made damn sure of that 6 months before my contract ended. Carrington's firewall was breached. It didn't make headlines, but rattled us internally. A 0-day exploit had penetrated as far as the finance back, and Gregory dismissed it as a reminder to tighten protocols, then went back to prepping board decks. But I knew better. That breach came way too close to the contract pipeline. It wouldn't happen again, not while I was here. So I took an unusual step. I designed a protocol inside Gateway Final, a biometric verification script with 3 layers of clearance: voice ID, terminal lock, and geolocation match. Simply put, the contract could only be executed from my office computer, with my voice not out of distrust for the company, but distrust for whoever might run it someday. Now, I was locked out of that office, watching from afar as Chloe pretended nothing had changed beyond the signature. But the gate didn't care about titles. It didn't answer to Director of Emerging Ventures. It didn't recognize surnames, it recognized me. That afternoon, my phone buzzed Jacob, an old colleague, young, quiet, incredibly sharp, who'd shadowed me on systems for years, messaged, "Olivia, did you set up biometric layers on Gateway Final? They're trying to push the contract, but it's rejecting everything." My stomach dropped. "They're what?" "Chloe's trying to sign off the final transfer, but the system's locked. It's asking for full confirmation from Origin's signature source. No one here knows what that means." "Of course not. I'd embedded it myself," quietly approved by the CTO. She signed off on my code when I told her it was insurance. But now she'd left, moving to fintech last quarter. And Chloe had no idea the gate even existed until it stopped responding. "Did you tell anyone?" Gregory's furious. He asked me to reset it. I told him it's impossible without wiping the confirmation log. He told me to keep quiet. I closed my eyes. They were scrambling. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my career building contracts to protect them from outside threats. Now I was the internal threat they couldn't control. But here's the kicker. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't walk in and explain the layers, the voice modulation requirement, or that only I could authorize the final step that would mean admitting I still held the key and giving it away. They'd call it sabotage, say I'd set a trap I hadn't. I just made sure no one else could impersonate me. And now I was watching my legacy grind to a halt behind a gate no one knew existed until last week. I stared out the window, picturing Chloe tapping impatiently, the cursor blinking on her screen like a broken light. I pictured Gregory pacing, shouting orders no one could follow. I pictured Jacob caught in the middle, smart enough to know the truth, but silenced with one line. "Don't make this political." Powerlessness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silence when you know everything but can't act. Sometimes it's watching the gate you built to protect everything become the lock that keeps you out. And the worst? They still thought they were in control. I hadn't meant to watch the company-wide live stream. Honestly, I tried not to, but at 9:55 a.m., a calendar reminder popped up. Leadership transition plus strategic milestone announcement. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened my laptop and clicked the link. The Carrington Air logo flashed, followed by a polished video montage, jets taking off, executives shaking hands, headlines glowing with historic growth and bold new directions. None of the headlines carried my name, even though I'd written the drafts of half those contracts. The screen cut to the company auditorium. Gregory stood center stage, flanked by two large monitors and a backlit Carrington crest. He looked calm and rehearsed, a man who'd done this a dozen times before, but I recognized that expression. It was the same cold enthusiasm he wore during quarterly layoffs. "Good morning, team," he began, steady and practiced. "Today marks the start of a new chapter for Carrington." I leaned back, waiting as Gregory continued. "As we move forward, we pay tribute to those who built the foundation, but every organization has to grow and transform. Sometimes that means releasing what once was cherished, no matter how essential it felt. Letting go." That's what I had become. A what? He smiled, gesturing to the side. "It's my pleasure to present someone who embodies the company's future. A new wave of leadership defined by intuition, innovation, and speed. Please join me in welcoming Chloe Carrington." The camera shifted to Chloe, confidently striding across the stage in a crisp white pantsuit, her glittering heels clicking sharply with each step. She took the microphone and smiled warmly, as if she hadn't just steamrolled nearly 3 decades of history without hesitation. "Thank you, Uncle Greg," she said sweetly. "Handling negotiations for the erasure contract was a tremendous learning experience. From the start, I understood this deal was about more than numbers. It was about setting a standard, showing clients Carrington's agility, decisiveness, and vision for the future." She hadn't been there when the agreement nearly collapsed over satellite access rights. She hadn't flown to Brussels amid the rail strike to meet with their legal team in person. She hadn't endured a dozen back-to-back calls to revise delivery terms during a worldwide supply chain crisis. Yet here she was, claiming my efforts, my voice, my chair, wrapped in buzzwords like disruption and foresight. Behind her, a monitor displayed key milestones, my name nowhere to be found. Even the project code had changed. What was once Project Orion, a name I coined, was now Venture Sky. The camera briefly caught department heads. One was Laia Marino, my longtime colleague and steady presence in procurement. She blinked back tears. The shot lingered just enough to catch her wiping a tear before abruptly cutting to a staged wide shot of the audience. The applause that followed felt hollow, even through my speakers. As the event concluded, Gregory offered closing words. "We honor our past leaders, but the path ahead demands progress. Stagnation is the enemy of growth." Stagnation. That's what I had become in their eyes. I stared at the screen long after the broadcast faded. My entire career had been devoted to this company, sacrificing holidays, sleep, family dinners, to meet targets and close deals. And now, I was erased as if I never existed. No mention, no gratitude, just a polite burial beneath corporate slogans and a pair of flashy heels. I didn't shed tears, I didn't explode, but something inside shifted, cold, silent, and razor sharp. Because if they thought my story ended here, they were profoundly mistaken. The morning after the stream, I sat silently at my kitchen table, nursing a half-empty cup of long cold coffee outside. The city buzzed with people heading to jobs where they still mattered. I stared at my laptop's blinking cursor, uncertain what to do. A draft email had remained open for 2 days. Not grand, no accusations, no bitterness. Just a simple thank you addressed to the one person who treated me like a human throughout this exhausting deal. Marcus Levinson, Senior Procurement Director at Constella Aerotech. He'd been there from the very first handshake. We'd spent countless hours dissecting contract clauses, debating timelines, hashing out technical details during midnight calls, often across time zones in a world full of inflated egos and political maneuvering. Marcus was refreshingly direct. He deserved a proper farewell. Even if no one else thought I did, I reviewed the draft once more. "Dear Marcus, Thank you for the opportunity to collaborate these past few months, despite the complexities. I sincerely valued the partnership and mutual trust we cultivated throughout this process. Wishing you all the best as the agreement moves into final implementation. Warm regards, Olivia Meyer. Short, polite, clean, the kind of note I'd sent countless times before. Yet somehow, this one weighed heavier than all the rest. I hovered my finger over send for what felt like ages before finally clicking. It slipped away like a whisper. I didn't expect a reply, certainly not so soon. But less than an hour later, my inbox chimed Marcus Levinson's message. Subject: Thank you, Olivia. I'm confused. Are you no longer involved with the project? We were not informed of any transition additionally. Our compliance team has flagged a version discrepancy in the final contract PDF. There are line edits and formatting changes in the execution copy we received yesterday that weren't present in our last joint review with you. We're currently pulling metadata. Can you clarify who is leading from Carrington now? My stomach tightened. They didn't know no one at Carrington had bothered to inform them of my departure. No courtesy call, no handoff, not even a copied email worse. They'd altered the contract after I left. That was more than disrespectful. It was reckless. I began typing, then stopped. I couldn't say what I wanted without sounding like I was undermining my own company or risking legal fallout. So instead, I replied simply, Marcus, unfortunately, I am no longer involved with the project. I wish I could provide more clarity, but I'm no longer authorized to speak for Carrington. However, you might want to review the fine print at the bottom of page 42. Respectfully, Olivia. It was subtle, but if he looked closely, he'd find it. At the bottom of that page was a timestamp field. Confirmation pending via biometric gateway activation required from Origin System. It had appeared in every draft since version 7. I had fought to keep it as a final safeguard. Apparently, Chloe and her team either didn't understand it or didn't care. Marcus replied 15 minutes later, That clause is still present. We didn't approve its removal. If Carrington can't fulfill that requirement, the contract isn't valid. I'll check with legal and get back to you. I stared at those words for a long time. I should have felt victorious, justified, vindicated. But instead, I felt hollow, drifting through the wreckage of a building I'd helped construct, watching others paint over my name as the structure started to crack. For the first time in weeks, I said aloud, though to no one, they have no idea what they're doing. And soon, they would learn it started with a ding, not the triumphant tone of a completed transfer, but a hollow electronic thud followed by silence. Then the dreaded spinning wheel. Chloe leaned closer to the screen. Her lips pressed into a tight line as the screen flickered twice before flashing a glaring red error message. Gateway Final Authorization Failed Security Environment Mismatch. She clicked repeatedly, her manicured finger tapping the trackpad harder as if increased force could change the outcome behind her. A small crowd had gathered inside the glass-walled executive boardroom, 2 junior assistants, a visibly sweating IT manager, and Gregory himself pacing nervously near the window. It had been exactly 19 minutes since Chloe first tried to authorize the final transfer for the $100 million contract. 19 minutes of loading bars, soft system reboots, whispered side conversations, and Chloe's forced smile fading into frustration. Why isn't this going through? She finally snapped, turning toward the IT lead, Brent, a pale, balding man in his late 40s, shifted uncomfortably. It's not that simple. The system recognizes the request, but it's flagging an environment mismatch. The terminal you're using isn't registered as the origin node. Gregory cut in sharply. Speak plainly, Brent. Brent swallowed hard. The system only accepts final authorization from the original device where the contract was created and negotiated, Olivia's desktop, not just any Carrington terminal. Chloe blinked. Can't you override it? Reassign the endpoint or something? He shrugged helplessly. That requires root-level admin clearance, and Olivia was the only one with that access. She encrypted the gateway under a 3-factor biometric lock tied to her user profile. Gregory's face twisted in disbelief. You're telling me we can't sign the biggest deal of the decade because of a computer setting? Brent hesitated. Not exactly. We could rebuild the system, but it would take days, maybe weeks. And even then, the client would need to re-authenticate on their end. Essentially, we'd be starting over. A vein pulsed in Gregory's temple as he pulled out his phone and dialed on speaker, "Get Jessica and Guion on the line now." Jessica, Carrington's former chief security officer and now head of data privacy at a compliance firm across town, answered after 2 rings. "Greg, what's going on?" "I need you to confirm something," Gregory said. His breath clipped. "Did Olivia Meyer install a proprietary security script on Gateway Final requiring authentication from her original workstation?" There was a pause. Then Jessica sighed. "Yes, she implemented that after the back-end breach last year. You signed off on it yourself. Remember? You called it excessive, but clever." Gregory closed his eyes. "And there's no way around it? No bypass without corrupting the contract log or triggering a rollback?" Jessica replied, "That gateway isn't just a lock. It's a vault, designed to shut down if tampered with." Chloe looked between them, voice rising. "Wait, so we can't finalize anything?" Gregory muttered under his breath and stepped away from the frame. Silence settled until Brent leaned in and whispered, "There's one more thing. The system keeps showing a secondary message." Chloe narrowed her eyes. What message? He turned the screen for her to read. "Awaiting Origin's signature Miro." Chloe sank back into my chair, and stared blankly at the blinking screen. The tension thickened. This wasn't just a technical glitch anymore. It was a full stop. The clock was ticking, the client waiting, and the one person who could fix it had been forced out 24 hours earlier, sitting miles away in my living room. A single-word message from Jacob, the young IT analyst, buzzed in. "They're panicking." I didn't reply instead. I sat quietly, watching the cursor on my personal device blink with the same calm patience it held the day I walked out. The gate was doing exactly what I designed it to do. It was waiting for me. At 11:42 p.m., my phone rang again. I didn't hesitate. This call wasn't from a colleague or Carrington. It was from the only person left who truly understood what was at stake. Marcus Levinson. His name lit up the screen just as I finished washing my dinner plate. I dried my hands, sat down at the kitchen table, and answered with a calm born of something deeper than confidence, something close to quiet revenge. "Olivia Meyer." There was a pause long enough to signal this wasn't a casual chat. "I read your message," Marcus said, "and I looked at page 42. I said nothing, waiting. "I need to ask you something," he continued. "Off the record, unofficial, just someone trying to understand what's happening on our side." "I'm listening." "Did you build a biometric gateway into the final contract confirmation system? One that locks execution to a specific terminal, voice print, and location?" I leaned back and exhaled slowly, letting the weight settle on his side of the line. "I did," I said. "It was authorized internally after last year's firewall breach scare. You and I reviewed that clause. It's in version 7. He cursed softly. "They didn't tell us the Carrington team's acting like the delay is just an IT hiccup, but nothing's going through. They're stalling." Not surprising. His voice dropped. "And the metadata on the final contract we got yesterday doesn't match what we approved. Someone altered the formatting and backdated the approval log." "That would explain the version issue," I said. "They tried slipping in an unsigned clause," he muttered. "But that gateway stopped it cold. Your protocol flagged it as inconsistent." Another pause. I pictured him now, sleeves rolled up, leaning forward on his desk in frustration and disbelief. Olivia, he said cautiously, is Carrington trying to fake the finalization? I wasn't in a position to say he understood the meaning in my silence. They've erased your name from the deal entirely, Marcus said tightly. Every document, every chain, as if you were never involved. But the system still knows you were. I smiled faintly. That system wasn't built to remember names, I said. It was built to detect absence. A short, bitter laugh came through. I'm escalating this internally. If they won't explain, we'll freeze the contract until further notice. Understood, I said. Let me know if I can help unofficially. You've done enough, Olivia. As the call ended, I stared at the silent phone in my hand. The city's hum faded beneath my thoughts. For the first time in days, I didn't feel invisible. I wasn't erased. They tried to write me out of history, but they couldn't sign off the system without me. And now, the one they tried to hide was the very person the client was calling in the dead of night. Not because I asked, but because the truth always comes calling at 6:02 a.m. The Carrington offices flickered to life earlier than usual, not with excitement, but with palpable dread. Chloe arrived before sunrise, her heels clicking sharply across the marble floors of the executive wing, clutching a large iced coffee in one hand and a trembling phone in the other. She bypassed her usual confident morning walk. Her pale face and reddened eyes betrayed the exhaustion of restless nights spent on unanswered calls. Without hesitation, she marched straight into the executive conference room, where Gregory paced anxiously in his shirt sleeves, hair disheveled, a dark stain marring his collar slowly. The rest of the executive suite trickled in, zipping jackets, checking watches, holding untouched coffees. The massive screen on the far wall already broadcast the breaking news. Times, the industry's top online finance digest, had just released a story 40 minutes earlier. Carrington Air fails to authorize $100 million government deal due to internal security conflict. Sources alleged the failure resulted from a purposely engineered authentication protocol tied exclusively to a recently terminated executive. Gregory snapped harshly. "Who the hell leaked that email?" Silence filled the room. Chloe returned to her task, seated at a spare desk with her personal laptop, eyes narrowing as she painstakingly typed the admin credentials for the third time that morning. The cursor blinked. Then access was denied. Invalid biometric ID. Terminal mismatch. Incident logged. She slammed the laptop shut, whispering, "It's still locked." Brent from IT looked utterly drained. "Of course it is," he said. "The protocol's environment-specific only Olivia's original device can authorize." Gregory whipped toward him, fury in his eyes. "Then find the device, clone it, reverse engineer it." Brent shook his head slowly. "It doesn't work that way. The biometric lock's encrypted in hardware and tied to her unique vocal signature and terminal MAC address. Duplicating the machine won't bypass it." Chloe's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone and began typing rapidly. Gregory caught her eye. "Who are you messaging?" "PR team," she replied quickly. "We have to get ahead of this." But it was too late. Within minutes, the story exploded. Blogs reposted it. Former employees shared it on LinkedIn. Twitter erupted with finance bros, mocking Carrington's tech failure. Some speculated Olivia had orchestrated it as revenge. Others simply admired the irony. By 7:30 a.m., a second email worsened the situation. A forwarded thread among Brent, compliance, and Marcus at Constellar Aeroch had accidentally been CC'd to the press subject. "We can't override Meyer contract, unexecutable, keep this internal." It was over across the city. I stirred milk into my tea while watching the sun rise over the skyline. The room smelled faintly of warm jasmine. My phone buzzed once, twice, thrice. First from Jacob. "They're freaking out. You're all over internal Slack. Times leaked the email chain." Then Marcus. Heads up, your name's trending on 2 trade forums, the board's in lockdown. I said nothing. I set the phone down and took a slow sip. The taste smooth and clean. Let them scramble. Let them fumble, trying to control a system they never bothered to understand. Let them regret shortcuts over integrity. I told no lies. I hadn't sabotaged anything. The system functioned exactly as intended, protecting the deal from unauthorized access, preserving the original terms. My absence was their error. They removed me from the story, but forgot I designed the infrastructure. The more they tried to pry open the gate, the louder it resisted. And now, the world was listening. At 9:20 a.m., a message arrived from Gregory Carrington. Subject: Request for meeting. Urgent, Olivia. We would appreciate the opportunity to discuss recent developments concerning the erasure contract. Please advise your availability today. Best, Gregory Carrington. No apology, no acknowledgement of their wrongdoing, just a polished request, as if I were a lost document needing retrieval. I stared at the email a moment, then typed one line. I will meet at my attorney's office at 1 o'clock. Miriam Hensley, my longtime personal counsel and among the city's sharpest contract lawyers, worked from a modest brick building just off Lexington Avenue. Nothing flashy, but a place that made execs sweat upon entry. At 12:57, I arrived early and sat across from Miriam in the glass-walled conference room. She glanced over her reading glasses as I handed her a sleek brown folder. Everything they need to see. I nodded, saying nothing more. At 1:03, Gregory arrived alone. His tie was loosened, the skin beneath his eyes purple with exhaustion. Gone was the confident CEO who'd once boasted agility and innovation on stage, replaced by a man who hadn't slept in 3 days. He extended his hand. I didn't take it. Olivia, he said, voice low and almost pleading. Thank you for meeting. I know this didn't unfold as it should have. I let the silence stretch. He sat opposite me. You know why I'm here? He finally asked. I do. He glanced at the folder Miriam pushed toward him. Is that it? I nodded. Miriam slid it across the table. Inside lay a simple printout of a code ownership agreement dated 10 months prior, signed by me and the former CTO, confirming my authorship and conditional control over the Gateway Final Protocol. Included were a digital timestamp, a third-party verification certificate, and a clause stating no edits or overrides could happen without my consent. Gregory skimmed the papers, then pressed a hand to his forehead. I need your help, he said, voice cracking. The client's threatening to walk the press is circling, the board's panicking. We can't get through final authentication without your voice, and Chloe's not ready for this. He looked up. I know we made mistakes, but you built this company with us. We need you now. I leaned back, keeping my tone even. You didn't just remove me, Gregory. You erased me. No transition, no acknowledgement. You replaced me with a child in glitter heels and told the world she secured a deal she didn't understand. He flinched. You used my work, my systems, my name, until it was inconvenient. And now, when the infrastructure reminds you who built it, you come running. He started to speak, but I raised a hand. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your emergency exit. And I certainly don't exist to fix the consequences you created. Gregory glanced down again. I'll authorize whatever bonus you want. Name the number, Miriam said, clearing her throat. That won't be necessary, I replied, rising slowly and smoothing my blazer. You had the chance to honor my legacy, I told him. Instead, you traded it for appearances. Gregory looked defeated. So what now? I walked to the door, paused with my hand on the knob, then turned back. You wanted a future without me, Gregory. Now you have it. Glancing once more at the folder still open on the table, I said the one sentence that truly mattered. Legacy isn't free. Then I walked outside. The sun dipped just beyond the skyline. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing the early afternoon air, surrounded by people rushing everywhere. But I felt still, clear. They expected me to crawl back, fix their fire, and smile while doing it. Instead, I let the building burn on its own. When you spend decades building something right, you don't need to shout. You just step back and let the cracks speak. By the time the official announcement dropped, I was seated by the window at Camden Rowers, a quiet cafe on East 46th, sipping black coffee and reading the paper like any other Thursday. The morning rush had eased into soft laptop typing, occasional steamed milk hisses, and ceramic cups clinking. It was peaceful, but inside Carrington, peace was the last thing anyone felt. At 8:37 a.m., my phone buzzed, not with a call, but a push notification. Constella Erasure press release. Immediate distribution due to concerns over transparency, protocol integrity, and leadership transition mismanagement. Constella Erasure had terminated the pending $100 million procurement agreement with Carrington Air effective immediately. I blinked slowly and scrolled down. The second paragraph said all I needed to hear. While we value the efforts of Carrington's legacy leadership, recent handling of key security operations caused irrevocable loss of confidence in the company's current direction. They didn't name me, but they didn't have to. They named what I stood for: integrity, stability, clarity, and what Carrington had become: uncertain, performative, hollow. Within 12 minutes, Carrington's stock dropped 6%. By noon, nearly 9 analysts scrambled. Reporters called it a wake-up call for legacy firms underestimating institutional knowledge. Twitter was a different story. Chloe's disastrous interview clip resurfaced, where she mispronounced Constella Erasure and claimed she made the final call to close early. One user posted, "Imagine losing a $100 million contract because you replaced your top exec with your niece, who can't even say the client's name." Another added, "Respect to whoever coded that security lockout. That's how you walk away with power." I didn't comment, like, or share. I just watched. Quietly across from me sat Marcy, a friend from the nonprofit board I joined last year. She glanced at my screen. "Is that the deal you were working on?" I nodded. "Is it bad you're smiling?" I looked down at the corner of my lips. Hadn't realized I was... "No," I said. "It's just rare to see consequences arrive on time." She laughed softly and returned to her coffee. By mid-afternoon, news broke internally that Chloe Carrington had been removed from all active projects pending executive review. A polished phrase for exile, a shiny title on a door no one would knock on again. Gregory, according to a text from Jacob, had called an emergency board meeting at 10:05 a.m. They tried blaming technical glitches and departmental miscommunications, but the board wasn't buying it. Screenshots and leaked emails piled up. Shareholders demanded answers. Someone in compliance, likely Brent, quietly shared audit trails showing Chloe's failed attempts to override Gateway Finals protocol timestamps, error messages, system logs, all pointing to one undeniable truth. They hadn't lost the contract due to sabotage. They lost it because they erased the one person who knew how to finish the job. I folded my phone, set it face down, and let silence settle. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift. Not revenge, not rage, just closure. I hadn't screamed, threatened, or leaked anything. I did what no one expected. I walked away and let the foundations speak. Truth always finds oxygen, especially when people bury it beneath silence and spectacle. They thought I needed them. They never imagined they'd need me. Now, in the aftermath, they weren't just losing money. They were losing credibility, face, and confidence. Damage invisible on balance sheets until it's too late. The barista brought a second coffee without asking, "You look like you're staying a while." "On the house," she said kindly. "You look like you just won something." I didn't answer at first. then smiled softly and took a peaceful sip. It's strange how an ending can feel like the start of everything a week had passed since the deal collapsed. 7 days since Carrington's name splattered across every headline, since Chloe vanished from LinkedIn, since the board issued a memo filled with corporate doublespeak like strategic restructuring and leadership reevaluation, code for "we messed up." I hadn't spoken to anyone at Carrington since my meeting with Gregory at Miriam's office. I didn't need to. My silence, the contract logs, and the press fallout spoke louder than any words I could have said. There was no satisfaction in gloating. No urge to return victory had come and gone. I didn't need to stand amid the ashes to prove I survived the fire I hadn't just survived. I redesigned the entire architecture around it. On Monday morning, Marcus Levinson, Senior Procurement Director at Constella Aeroch, called, not a journalist, not a gossiping colleague, but the calm, precise man I'd once negotiated across a 12-hour time difference with in Munich, Olivia. He said, "We've assessed everything, and leadership on our side has made a decision." I waited. "We'd like to retain you," he continued. "Not as a vendor contact," Marcus clarified, "but as an independent advisor, strategic counsel for our internal infrastructure team." I blinked. "You mean as a contractor?" "No," he said firmly. "As a partner." There was a pause before he added, "with full discretion, a flexible contract, and a compensation package that makes your last Carrington salary look like pocket change." I didn't respond immediately. Rising from the dining table, I walked to the window and looked out over the bustling city below. Taxis darting through intersections, pedestrians crossing with coffee in hand. The same chaos I used to be buried under daily, now somehow distant. "I appreciate the offer," I said slowly. "But you should know I'm not interested in rebuilding what I had. I'm not looking to replicate Carrington anywhere else." Marcus didn't hesitate. "We're not asking for that. We want you. Your judgment, your process, the part of the deal no dashboard or title can capture." He paused. "We know what we almost lost." Something shifted inside me. This wasn't about revenge, nor reclaiming status. It was about being seen clearly, without politics, without noise, without raising my voice to be heard. "Send the paperwork," I said. 2 days later, I signed the agreement from a quiet workspace uptown. No cubicles, no lanyard, no buzzing fluorescent lights. Just natural light, my own desk, and a clean laptop free from any system legacy haunting its settings. I chose my hours, I chose my clients. I chose my words. I wasn't anyone's backup plan or a placeholder for a cheaper, younger version. I was the plan. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd proven systems don't run solely on code or key cards. They run on judgment, on memory, on people like me who quietly hold everything together until you try to cut them out and the whole foundation caves in. At 4 p.m. that Friday, I returned to Camden Rowers, the same cafe where I'd watched Carrington collapse across headlines a week earlier. The barista remembered me. "Same table?" she asked with a smile. I nodded. She brought a cappuccino and, this time, a little chocolate square on the side. "On the house," she said as I took a sip. My phone buzzed. A text from Jacob. "Board replaced Gregory official this morning. New interim CEO is an outsider. No mention of Chloe." They tried to clean up the wreckage, but it only reminded everyone who caused it I typed a brief reply. "Told you the system never forgets its author." Setting my phone down, I smiled. Not broadly, but deeply, in my bones, in my spine. Where power doesn't need proclamation, they thought pushing me out would erase me. They believed my silence was surrender, but the silence was deliberate. The silence was where the trap lay hidden. And once sprung, I didn't have to lift a finger.